Israel rejects a ceasefire deal with Hamas and continues strikes on targets in Rafah.
A new chapter for Poland as the European Commission takes steps to drop Article 7 rule of law action.
More than two-thirds of 705 MEPs have paid part-time jobs, from which they earn a total of more than €8.6 million a year.
Israel has rejected a ceasefire deal with Hamas, with officials criticizing it as watered down and far from the country's basic demands. Details of what was in the proposal have been scarce, but it's believed to have included an exchange of Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners and the withdrawal of the Israeli military from Gaza. The news that Hamas had agreed to the proposal was met with jubilation on the streets of Rafah among Gaza's war-weary population.
فرحنا ما صدقناش حسيت حالي في حلم يعني تقريبا فرحة مش طبيعية كانت يعني مش عارف كيف اوصف لك فرحة مش طبيعية بس إن شاء الله بتتم على خير.
But just hours after Hamas agreed to the deal, Israel launched what it called targeted strikes against the group's positions in Rafah. More than 1.4 million Palestinians are sheltering in the city after being advised to relocate there by the Israeli military, who declared it a safe zone. Earlier in the day, the IDF ordered 100,000 Palestinians to evacuate to a humanitarian zone in the coastal municipality of Al-Mawasi. Israel's war cabinet says it's determined to proceed with a full-scale ground offensive into Rafah to eliminate the Hamas battalions reportedly based there. Those plans have been met with fierce international criticism.
Today's evacuation orders for East Rafah will only worsen the civilians' suffering. They are being instructed to relocate to Al-Masawi, which is already overcrowded and lacking safety and essential humanitarian services. A mass evacuation on this scale is impossible to carry out safely.
Meanwhile, protests have continued in Tel Aviv. Demonstrators are hoping to push the government to bring home the Israeli hostages from Gaza. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he would send a delegation to meet with negotiators to try to reach an agreement acceptable to both sides. China's President Xi Jinping has said his country is willing to work with France towards a global cessation of war during the upcoming Paris Olympics. At a press conference in Paris, Xi said his country has been playing an active role in achieving peace in the war in Ukraine. China claims neutrality in the Ukraine conflict, but Xi and Russian President Vladimir Putin declared their governments had a no-limits friendship before Moscow's invasion of the country.
女士们、先生们，当今世界很不太平。作为联合国安理会常任理事国和负责任大国，中国愿同法方一道。
Trade disagreements mark the start of Xi Jinping's, the Chinese president's, two-day state visit to France. But after what the Chinese leader qualified as fruitful talks along with French President Emmanuel Macron, it seems like Beijing is ready to spare the French cognac industry. Indeed, China had threatened to impose very strict tariffs on this very important product for both countries after the EU launched a series of investigations against what they say are market-distorting practices by Beijing, like, for example, flooding the EU market with very cheap electric vehicles. Another very important subject this Monday evening on the table that was discussed, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. President Macron welcomed China's commitment to refrain from selling any more technology that could help Moscow in its war against Ukraine. It also thanked Beijing for supporting its idea of an Olympic truce for all conflicts during the upcoming Paris Summer Olympics. However, it is important to note that not once did Xi Jinping condemn Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which was one of Macron's main goals this Monday evening. And after France, Xi Jinping will travel to Moscow-friendly nations such as Hungary and Serbia. And this itinerary is clearly sending a message as the EU is still figuring out whether China should be considered as a strategic partner or, as the US tends to view this nation, a dangerous rival. Sofia Katsenkova reporting from Paris for Euronews.
More than 2/3 of 705 MEPs have paid part-time jobs, from which they earn a total of more than 8.6 million euros a year. New research published by Transparency International assessed the finances of MEPs working second jobs. Topping the list is a Lithuanian MP who declared 3 million euros per year working for a real estate company. He is followed by a French and then a Hungarian politician, then by the president of the European People's Party, Manfred Weber.
Published on the European Parliament website. It is perfectly legal to have a side job as long as we are transparent about it. But obviously, when we look at the contents of the declarations that the MEPs have filled in, we do see some activities that really raises some concerns. Activities, for example, involving a multinational company while they themselves were in charge of drafting legislation that might affect that company.
Transparency is not accusing any MEPs of breaking the rules, but the research underscores that some MEPs are getting paid by companies in the same sector as a lot of their parliamentary activity. Among those involved, Polish Marek Belka told Euronews that his supervisory board meetings do not violate his obligations as an MEP. Transparency says potential conflicts of interest must be investigated, especially given the influence scandals that have taken place in Brussels in the past.
As we see today in the European elections, one of the key themes is about foreign interference, and we know that theoretically, according to the rules today, you are perfectly allowed to receive money maybe from a third country government or have an activity as long as you are transparent about it. And so what we advocate is a banning of these side activities.
Stricter rules in European Parliament mean MEPs are now required to publish more detailed information about their finances.
Hundreds of demonstrators gathered in Berlin to protest against extreme right violence and to promote democracy in the country, following the attack on a candidate of Olaf Scholz's party for the European elections. Matthias Eck, the SPD's favorite candidate in Saxony for the June 9 elections, was beaten on Friday in Dresden by 4 individuals as he hung campaign posters for the Social Democratic Party.
Wir waren gestern geschockt, wir waren fassungslos, wir waren traurig, wir sind wütend, wir sind immer noch geschockt über die Nachricht, dass unser Freund Matthias Ecke zusammengeschlagen wurde beim Plakate aufhängen.
Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Denn wir wissen aus der Geschichte, Nazis, die gewinnen nicht erst dort an Macht, wo sie Mehrheiten haben. Nazis gewinnen dort an Macht, wo Demokraten passiv werden. Jetzt ist der Moment, dass alle Demokraten zusammenkommen und laut sagen, wir werden nicht weichen.
The 4 suspects, aged 17 to 18 years old, were already identified by the police.
Nachdem sich am 5. Mai bereits ein 17-jähriger Jugendlicher bei der Polizei gestellt hatte, konnten durch unsere Ermittlungen 2 weitere Tatverdächtige namentlich bekannt gemacht werden. Und auf Anordnung des Amtsgerichts Dresden wurden dann diese 2 Wohnungen auch durchsucht und die 2 Personen auch festgestellt. Im Laufe des weiteren Abends haben wir dann auch noch den 4. Tatverdächtigen festgestellt.
Nearly 2,000 people also took the streets in Dresden during the weekend to express support for democracy.
The European far right in Valencia is aiming to win over the farming industry's support in the upcoming June elections. A new Spanish grassroots platform called 6F joins a dozen other European agricultural associations calling for an end to the Green Deal, protection of the European internal market, and slashing free trade agreements with third countries.
Todo aquel que lleve el pin de la 2030 es el enemigo del campo.
Although 6F is an independent movement, some of its organisers are figures close to the far right. However, the new pan-European agricultural platform will not ask for votes for a specific party.
What we have done is we made enormous posters and banners, and we put the logos of the parties who did very bad things for farmers and for our Dutch citizens, and we put a red cross in it, and people understood.
New candidates will fight the hard right party Vox for the rural vote, with the main agricultural platforms not directly contesting the elections.
Quizá hayan aprendido del movimiento de los chalecos amarillos francés, que en 2019 presentó 2 candidaturas a las elecciones europeas y no logró el 1% suficiente para lograr representación.
The SOS Rural Platform, which encompasses more than 500 organisations from the primary sector, has chosen to try to influence political parties to include their demands in their electoral programs.
Nosotros, desde nuestro punto de vista, creemos que con un diputado, 2 diputados o 3 diputados, la capacidad de influencia es bastante limitada. Necesitamos influir en los grandes grupos políticos de Europa, llámese el Grupo Popular o el Grupo Socialista, para intentar cambiar las políticas en Europa.
Despite its similarities with Vox, SOS Rural seems to have distanced itself from the more conservative ideas of the Spanish far-right party. However, EU agricultural policy protests benefit Vox, according to analysis. So who will conquer the 700,000 Spanish farmers? Their vote will be decisive in the upcoming European elections.